Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversation with Cavalry the Species. Hey, Merry Christmas, by the way, Ronnie.
Well, Merry Christmas to
You're
you.
1 week away from Christmas, so therefore this is December 18th. This is timely. This is going right up. This is as timely as I've ever done something. And we're going to talk about your work. We're going to talk about your coming back home to New Jersey in January at the New Brunswick Performing Arts Center. I'm not a comedian. I'm Lenny Bruce. I've seen it several times. I'm going to be seeing it again. And I've said this to you in the past. I've known you a bunch of years. We'll talk about that. You are, you are Lenny Bruce. And lots of people don't know Lenny Bruce today, but we'll talk about
Thank you.
that.
Thank you. Very nice. Thank you.
You are, and I always kind of feel that it's kind of a spiritual thing too, the channeling, that some of these energies, come down, and Lenny's energies have channeled through you, because when I see you on stage and performing, and even when I'm talking to you now, you're Lenny Bruce. And somewhere not too long ago, I read somebody had called Lenny one of the great Americans of all time, because of his battles for free speech. We'll talk about that. Anyway, you're coming home in January. That's why we've gathered together. That was an old Thanksgiving song. We gather together to whatever. Anyway, welcome, and let's just do a little intro, and we'll do our thing.
Thank you for having me, Calvin. It's always awesome connecting with you and talking Lenny and talking shop. So I appreciate it.
Perfect. So you're coming to New Brunswick in January.
Yeah, January 11th, 12th, and 13th, 3 nights at the NB PAC in New Brunswick.
Okay. And the history, I always like the to talk about the history of how Lenny came into your life. I know the Edison Valley Playhouse a bunch of years ago, you were performing Lenny's back, and he's mad as hell, something like that.
Lenny's back and boy is he pissed.
Or is he pissed? Okay.
That was another play that I had done. I opened that show, God, it's got to be like 17, 18 years ago. It was another one-man show of Lenny that Charlie Brill, a great comic, Charlie Brill, brought to me. He said, why don't you learn it? I'll direct it. And long story short, we did so well out here, I wanted to bring it home. So I went back to the Edison Valley Playhouse because that was the very first yes that I had ever gotten by Bill Cecilberg, one of my favorite people in the world. And so he gave me my first yes as an actor. So I thought, well, he was the artistic director there at the Edison Valley Playhouse. So I thought, well, what a better way to come celebrate this important show and Lenny with the first place that gave me a yes. And so I brought it home and we did really well there. And then, after I did the show twice, 5 years apart, ran for 6 months, took 5 years off, ran again, 6 months, did great. But then one day I woke up and I realized that as much as I loved the show and it really was my introduction to Lenny, I realized that I was leaving some of the stuff out because in that show, we didn't do the bits, we didn't do the material. I don't want to say it was, it was like one day I woke up and realized there was so much more to the story that I needed to tell. And so I went back to that playwright. I said, maybe we could put the material in. He said, no, my play's written. I said, fine, I understand. So then I took 5 years and wrote my own.
Wow.
The show that I'm bringing to New Jersey and that you saw in New York was the one that I wrote. And, we show the whole story, warts and all, as you know. So it's cool. And Joe Mantegna directed it, the great Joe Mantegna, which is fantastic.
Yeah. And it's funny, he's a really hands-on director from stuff I can pick up. I mean, he's almost at every show. I mean,
Oh, he comes all the time. He's
Yeah.
loving it. He's very proud of it. In fact, this picture is Joe directing.
Oh, wow.
This was our 110th performance in Los Angeles.
Wow.
This is Joe directing me. I asked Joe to sign it for me, and he did.
Yeah, it's funny because I saw you at the Edison Valley Playhouse a bunch of years ago, that first, and I follow you. I'm not a lurker, but I follow you, and as I'm not a comedian, I'm Lenny Bruce is getting birthed, and it's out in LA. I must have met you somewhere at some music event here, and I said, gosh, if you ever kind of bring it here, let me know.
Yeah.
And when it I think the millisecond that I heard you were bringing it to New York, I jumped and I sat in the first row, right smack on stage.
I remember the night. Yeah, I was at the cutting room and I remember
Yep,
the tall guy in the front row with the Rutgers hat. I said, okay, this is him.
yep,
And you've been such a support, and I appreciate that. And I know how much the show means to you, how much Lenny means to you, which, you know, anybody who could ever talk about Lenny with me in an authentic way is like,
yeah,
because this is not a show I'm doing. I feel like in some ways it's a responsibility to Lenny, and I not to get too hokey, but I feel like I'm kind of trying to finish something he didn't get to do
right,
on his behalf. You know what I mean? So it's cool. Yeah.
right. It's funny, my history with Lenny Bruce goes back to I missed him, and it was a transformative part of my life because I missed Lenny. I was old enough to know about him, to appreciate him. I was a young kid, early college kid, and there he's doing all this stuff, and I'm not jumping on it. And it was only after he passed, as Phil Spector said, Lenny died of an overdose of police.
Of the police. Yep. That's true. That's true. Well, I'm sorry you missed him in that way, but I'm also thrilled that you know, even though you missed him live, he became an important part of your life anyway.
Yeah,
You
did.
know what I mean? So like, you know, it's great. It's awesome. Listen, I meet so many people who have either seen Lenny or have been influenced by Lenny. And that's the stuff I'm excited about. When I get to these cities, that's why I tend to do a bunch of talkbacks at these shows. A lot of times I'll say, hey, if you want to stay, and nobody leaves. It's wild. I mean, I just did a show at Skokie in Skokie, Illinois, 900 seats. And I thought, nobody's going to stay for the talk. You know, a few people might stay and talk. I come back on stage 3 minutes after I get dressed, 900 people are waiting to talk about the show and talk about Lenny. And that happens everywhere I go. Hardly anybody leaves. And so it's become this wonderful thing. I feel like people come there to experience this with Lenny, but then they want to discuss it. And that makes me so happy, you know? So.
Uh, when I discovered Lenny, I went to a Broadway play, Cliff Gorman, who was pretty good. And, I went to the play because I went to the play. I wanted to know who Lenny Bruce was, and that lit my fire. That lit my fire, and then I became this, and then I got all his a little show and tell. I acquired just about every album that Lenny. Oh
Got
yeah,
that one right there. Got that one right there.
yeah, every album,
Got that
every
one.
vinyl, and I bought a little old Victrola to listen to it. And actually, this is Cliff Gorman, from the. So
Yeah,
I listened.
I don't have that one. I was going to say that. That's Cliff Gorman. It makes
Oh
sense.
yeah, yeah. So I think I have them all. I think I have them all, and I would listen to them because I'm an OCD person, and listen to them and listen to them, and I absorbed his bits. So I think I mentioned this to you when I was newly single again, and I used to go to Club Med, and I'd sit in the back of the plane with a French cigarette. You know, I have that cigarette, and I do my Lenny Bruce bits.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I do my Lenny Bruce bits. And I started to say this to you, life is full circle, and the spiritual aspect of my connection with Lenny and his free speech and his battles, and it's just something that I took on for a lot of different reasons. And some of that I explore in this, my second novel. I'm semi-promoting it, which is a love story to Rutgers. It's a journey to spirit, and in a lot of in that there's expressions of how I feel about Lenny and Kitty Bruce, because she was always in my focus. And when I had the chance to meet her backstage, and she knew me because I took pictures and I threw it up on social media of all my albums, and my foot and my bare foot was on top of the albums, and so she kind of knew who I was. And so for me to meet Kitty Bruce backstage and to hug was a very transformative part of my life. That was a major portion of my life. It was that, and also meeting John Lewis from Civil Rights, and having him hold my hands. And so it was Kitty Bruce and John Lewis. These were full circle events in my life, very spiritual. So this whole thing, with you and the work that you do, and it is so spiritual to me. And I had to express it in my book because it's part of my life, part of my matrix.
That's incredible. That's awesome. I love that. I love that when sometimes things hit us in life, art, people, it's all important, free speech. I mean, it's all important. So that's why there's no really right or wrong. It's like when somebody's attracted to something, something hits somebody, you can't argue like that's not important to that person. And so I think it's awesome that you're so connected to Kitty, and she's so dear to me. She's like literally like a sister. She's family through and through. We talk all the time, and I just love her so much. And so, and I'm so honored that she trusted me with the material and has been a big champion of the play. I mean, she loves the play and loves me. And so that matters, because there's one thing about doing a play about some famous guys, another thing, I feel like you are responsible to the family and they approve is a huge thing. I mean, it's wild, Wow.
Hey, Ronnie Marmo, what's a bad word? What is a bad word?
There are no bad words. There are only dirty minds. There are no dirty words, only dirty minds.
Okay. It's funny. Lenny was posthumously pardoned by Governor Pataki in New York.
Yeah.
Of all places on earth, Lenny gets arrested for obscenity in New York City.
2003, he apologized. Bob Corn Revere and Ron Collins, Bob wrote the petition, but Ron, it was his idea and he brought it to Bob. They become really dear friends of mine. Ron wrote The Trials of Lenny Bruce, and we're all very close now. In fact, something I never put out publicly, and I actually did put it out publicly. I just didn't promote it. If you look it up, type my name in Google with Ron Collins, and we wrote an op-ed to Free Speech and Cancel Culture last year, and it got picked up by all the publications, and it just spread all over. I never promoted it, not for any reason other than I got busy and I kind of forgot to promote it, so I should probably put it out. But it's a good read. I think you'll appreciate it. But it's our version of what we feel of. It's an op-ed against cancel culture and free speech, and so I'd love you to check that out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these guys are amazing, and it was their idea, And Bob wrote the petition. He brought it to Honey Harlow and I guess Kitty and the powers that be, and lots of great people signed that petition. Robin Williams, Penn and Teller. Like, you'd be shocked how many people signed that thing. And the fact that he was the first person in New York history to be posthumously pardoned ever.
Wow.
That's pretty wild. That is Lenny Bruce, and rightfully so. Rightfully so.
In my reading up about you, because I do my due diligence, you had said something once, and I wrote it down, and I remembered it. Despite everything that Lenny endured legally, the whole system was jumping on Lenny, and they made him an example. And he offended police, the church. I mean, all this kind of stuff. But he always still believed that we still had the best justice system here.
He did. Kitty and I spoke about that a lot, and Kitty brought that to me, and that was a revelation for me to hear that from her. She brought it to me and said, listen, my dad always believed that, someday they were going to apologize and go, we're sorry, and we get it. So sorry, Lenny. And also he believed that this is the greatest justice system in the world, and that was that. And he really believed it, despite all the craziness and how they hounded him and hounded him. So yes, so that's true. It's wild. Wow.
I was a fan. I watched Mrs. Maisel, and one of the reasons why I watched it is because of the relationship she had with Lenny Bruce. And did you like the representation that they did with Lenny, or should they have done more, or was adequate?
Well, look, I only saw about 2 episodes. I didn't get to watch the series, unfortunately. Did I like it? I think I always want them to do more about Lenny, for Lenny, always. So the answer is always I want more. It wasn't his show, it was her show. But I think he's a good actor and I think he did a good job. I mean, the reality is like that show was, I read reviews and many of them said he was the fairy godmother. And so that to me tells me, that's not Lenny Bruce. Now I think they did a great job with what they were trying to do. And I love the show. And quite honestly, I'm very grateful to the show because they opened up an entire generation to Lenny's name. People didn't know. I thought I was going to be doing this play up and down Florida for the rest of my career. And it turns out, I thought average age was going to be 150. And it turns out that's not true. I come out on the stage, half the people are in their 20s and 30s. And so I'm so grateful to the show. The best way I can explain it is this. Luke's a wonderful actor. He did a great job. It wasn't his show. They were going for a more colorful version of Lenny. And the best way I could describe it is, remember how I said that other show that I was doing, Lenny's Back in Boise Pissed? I love doing it, but then one day I woke up and realized that that's how I feel about that show. It's like I think they scratched the surface. I almost feel like if you learn about Lenny through Maisel, that's awesome. And then come to my show and find out the rest. That's the best way I could explain it. But I'm grateful and I think he's a wonderful actor. So he did a good job. Yeah.
Okay. Can you refresh my memory how the title, I'm Not a Comedian, I'm Lenny Bruce, how that came to be?
I was reading, I forgot what I had called it originally. And I just couldn't come up with a name. And then I was reading this book, and one day Lenny, they quoted him, and it was just right in the middle of this page I was reading, and he said, "I'm sorry it wasn't funny tonight. I'm not a comedian. I'm Lenny Bruce," and he walked off. And I went, "There's the title. I'm not a comedian. I'm Lenny Bruce." Because here's a couple of things. It hit me over the head like a ton of bricks, and I thought it's a perfect title. One, when you say I'm not a comedian, that means he is a comedian, but there's so much more to him. And then his name, Lenny Bruce. I mean, that's, I know people come to see my work or they come to see Joe's direction, but the star of the show is Lenny. And so that's why I wanted to make sure it was in the title. There have been other titles like Let the Buyer Beware, or these titles of these things that I've written. But if you don't know it's about Lenny, then maybe you won't be attracted to it. And so I wanted to make sure, but the title hit me over the head. I thought, boy, that really sums it up, He's so much more than a comic, and he said that, and he walked off stage one night, and so I was like, well, there it is. There's the title. So,
You've had American royalty come to see you. I mean, we were just talking about Billy Crystal came to see you, and Tony Bennett came to see you, and
Beth Levinson, Patti LuPone,
wow.
Paul Reiser, Richard Lewis,
Wow.
Ed Asner. It just goes on and on. There's a whole list, and I am so grateful. Mayor Dinkins came with Congressman Charlie Rangel came. So I had these congressmen coming to see the show. They wanted to hear from Lenny again. All these wonderful people. I mean, one day I'm watching CNN and I hear Chappelle and Jon Stewart talking about my show on CNN. I'm like, well, it's my show. And I was in some coffee shop just watching CNN, and it was on, and they were talking about this show about Lenny Bruce, blah, blah. So it's become this thing that people want to see, and and I'm very grateful. I mean, when you write something, you can't imagine it being that successful. You could dream about it, but everything's got to line up right for it to actually become something like that. And it has. And I'm on tour now. I'm on a national tour. I've played about 16 cities in addition to the 3 long runs in LA, New York, and Chicago. And so it's wild. I just played San Diego 2 weeks ago and 5 sellout performances, which was beautiful. And next up is my hometown, Can't do better than that. I'm a Woodbridge guy. For those who don't know, I'm from Woodbridge, New Jersey. Grew up in Woodbridge. New Brunswick was definitely a big part of my life, both positively and definitely negatively. I was a little punk teenager, and let's just say I walked through the courthouse once or twice, And I used to look across the street at the State Theater and go, wouldn't that be amazing?
Wow.
And, and then here I am. You have no idea, Calvin, what is going on for me spiritually with this whole specific engagement. It's I can't really put it into words how I feel
You're
about
home.
and
You're home.
I leave my soul on the stage every night, but I'm going to leave my soul, my guts, and everything else I can muster up because I'm coming home. You know, it's like, what a blessing that people actually care about what I'm doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if I would have ran a little slower or made a different right or left turn growing up as a teenager, things could have went a lot differently for me. So thank goodness I found my way. I've had a lot of love and support from the Central Jersey people throughout my life, and to come home is wild. It's wild.
It is wild. It's wonderful. And literally the second I saw that you're coming home, boom, I gotta sit up front.
Oh,
I
you
gotta
did.
be there. Well, I just have to. And I think, and it's funny, we were talking about this and getting a little bit heavy. Your play in this day and age, and I'm not gonna really go deep beneath the surface, but your play is about as timely a play as there's ever been, because this free speech is in the news 18 times a day.
No, it's wild. I mean, you know, it's interesting to see because back in the 60s, Lenny was definitely, you would consider him someone on the left and someone who fought for the brown and black people and the people who were voiceless in a lot of ways. He was kind of a voice for those people, and I'm very proud of that. And then funny enough, I wouldn't say funny enough, ironic enough, because it's not funny, but the folks on the right today are the ones screaming, "Don't take away my words." And so what I find interesting is like it's kind of the shift has happened. And quite honestly, I saw my audience shift a little bit before and after George Floyd. I kind of watched this transition. Now, everybody comes, the left and the right, which is great because it's, I feel like the show is a conversation starter for a lot of people. And if everybody's yelling at each other and thinks we're right all the time, we're not going to get anywhere. So, you know, I had a friend come over last night. He brought me a humidor because I got these great cigars. And he and I politically are completely on the other spectrum. We do not agree politically. And he said to me, he came over last night, he goes, "You know what I love about our friendship?" I said, "What's that?" He goes, "We couldn't disagree more." And then we always finish the conversation with, "I'll see you tomorrow. Call me later."
Mm.
Because it's okay. They used to, you know, in our country, it used to not be polite to talk politics. Remember those days? So what I'm saying is that the show is for everyone. I'm proud to represent the show for everyone. I don't you don't have to agree with me to be my friend. You know what I mean? And that's just the way it is. I mean, life's too short. We're not in capsule, you know, it's hard to sum us up by what we think of this or that. Free speech, I feel really strongly about. I mean, you can't play Lenny Bruce and then think, you know, can you imagine if I was like, I disagree with it? You know, people always ask me, Calvin, like, how do Lenny and I differ with our thoughts and feelings? And my answer is always the same. 6 years ago, I could have told you. Today, I can't because my heart doesn't know that I'm acting. I don't believe in acting. So I come up there and I tell the truth every night and I spill my guts out. And so my heart has fallen in love with Lenny's mission. And so I don't know what we disagree with anymore. 6.5 years ago, when we opened this show in Los Angeles, there were a couple of things I was like, I don't know, Lenny, I don't know. And now I couldn't tell you what they are because it's okay. You know, I feel like that's the right way to do it. I don't want to fake it up there. You know what I mean? So anyway, I'm rambling a little. Hopefully that all made sense.
Yeah, no, I love listening to your rambling because
Thanks, man.
you're channeling. And by the way, I could talk to you about channeling. I wrote a book a little bit about channeling. It exists.
Well, I believe so. And, you know, Kitty Bruce and many others have said, and if you read the reviews, if you go on lennybruceonstage.com and just get lost in some of the reviews, go down a little rabbit hole, lots of reviewers who said, you know, there's channeling going on in this performance. Like Lenny's there with me. And you know, I'm grateful. I mean, I don't know if you don't buy into it or you do buy into it, that's okay, as long as you know that, I do feel like something else is happening in the room. The show's pretty wild to perform because it's a monster. It's a 90-minute monologue. It's just me. It's a huge, huge undertaking every night. People say San Diego last week, 2 weeks ago, was my 433rd performance.
Wow,
People say, how can you do a 90-minute monologue
wow,
433 times? Aren't
wow.
you sick of it? I go, I don't even have my arms around it yet. I don't know what the hell this is. It's so big. It's so I don't even know if I know the lines. Every night I go, I don't know if I know it. And so the nights that I am like, "Oh, it's tight and I'm fighting against the emotional value and I don't want to deal with it and I don't feel like opening my heart and my mind." The play takes 6 hours in my mind. The nights that I just give myself over and go, I'm here for you, whatever you need from me. It feels like it goes by in 7 minutes. And I'm like, it's over already. So it's a really interesting, and I never know what night it's going to be. The audience can't tell the difference. You would say, I can't tell you so many nights I come out for the curtain call and I'm like, man, what the hell was I thinking? And then they get a standing ovation and I want to go sit down. No, it wasn't great tonight. And they're like, screaming bravo. And you go, okay, it's not for me to judge, which is all theater, right? That's all theater. It's like the actors have to let the audience have their experience, which is why I think theater is the number one, it's the best. It's the best
Good.
because there's a relationship between the audience and the actors tonight that will not be the same tomorrow night. Even though the material is the same, the actors are the same, but there's a combination of what goes on in this one evening, in this one performance. It's a shared moment in time that you can't get anywhere else. And so anyway, I love theater, as you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. Speaking of theater, talk a little bit about Theater 68, how that
Theater,
came about. That's the production company that puts this on, correct?
well, yeah,
Yeah.
yes, but it's also my theater company that I started February 14th will be 24 years.
Wow.
We started in 2001. What year are we in now? 23, 24? What are we going into
Almost 24. Almost 24.
I don't know what year we're in. Uh, so we started the company 23 years ago, and we're on both coasts. We're 12 years old in New York. And it's wild because it's like every Monday night we have what we call our actors gym, and the actors come together and they work out. There's no teacher, but it's very structured. You feel like you're in class, and we bring in scene work and monologues, and we help each other out. It's more of an artist collective. But and I'm the artistic director of both coasts, so I pick the material we produce. We closed the show last night called Hellcab. I directed it, and it ran in LA and New York simultaneously. It was a wonderful production, and so there's probably 30 actors on both coasts, so 60 strong or something like that. And in some ways I feel like it's my life's work because I'm in a position to give artists an opportunity to come and do what they love and what they dream about. And so out of all the work I've done in my career, I do feel like Theater 68 in some ways hopefully will be the thing they're talking about, you know, at my funeral, because I want people to, I want to provide an opportunity for artists to have a place to call home and do what they love. And so I think we've done that. And we've produced 120 productions over 20 some odd years, and Lenny being one of them. I don't think of Lenny that way though, because it's just me. And I feel like, when we're producing company shows, I feel like it's like there's 16 people on stage, but it is a Theater 68 production, and we've produced LA, New York, Chicago, and just very proud of it. Very proud of it.
You were teaching, I don't know if you still do. You were teaching a Zoom class too?
I am. I'm teaching. I still am on Wednesdays. I think we just hit 4 years.
Wow.
Uh, every Wednesday. I did it as a fundraiser for the theater company in the pandemic, and I fell in love with it. I was like, oh, I can't stop doing this. And I've got, a dozen or so actors from around the country. There's actually been people out of the country who's taken the class. I won't curse on your show, but
But you can use the EFFEN.
it's called Stop Effing Acting.
Yes, that's a fine word. It's,
That's the next, that's the name of the class, Stop Effing Acting, because nobody wants to watch acting. And so we really work on getting to the truth, and I'm very grateful, it's really become this thing that I can't see myself not doing. Uh and it's great for me because I travel around the country all the time. So the idea that it's on Zoom, I fire up my laptop, I find somewhere quiet for 3 hours on Wednesday afternoons is like, it's a gift, and I will continue to do the class as long as they'll have me. And it's wonderful, you know. And my wife, Janelle, is a huge part of the class. She helps out a lot and she leads us in certain things. She's very smart and very talented. So
how you met Janelle, I thought was priceless.
yeah.
Priceless. Well, that's part of meant to be. That's a meant to be kind of thing. She comes to see you perform and boom.
Yeah, so the short version is I'm in Chicago doing the show. Uh One night we're sold out. We have one ticket left in the front row.
Wow.
Janelle's in Chicago on business. She's from New Jersey. I'm living in LA. She lives in New Jersey. She's in Chicago on business. Her friend can't make it out. She didn't feel well. So Janelle says, I don't want to sit in the hotel room. She Googles best show to see in Chicago. My show comes up. I'm very grateful. And there's one ticket left in the front row. She buys the ticket. After the show, we did a double take, and that was the end of my life. I went, oh, there goes the next 20 years of my life.
Wow. It's
And,
great. By the
yeah,
way,
yeah.
that is so meant to be.
Oh, it's incredible. And so, and the pandemic was obviously very difficult for everyone, obviously. But I tell you, for us, it really kind of slowed us down to like see, you know, I'm not sure I have ever taken the time in my whole life to get to know someone on that level. We were forced into it. We would Zoom for 12 hours a day, and just talk and, and it just became this thing. It was magic.
Yeah.
And so she would come out on a one-way ticket to LA. We stay, oh, you want to stay a week or two? We'll see how it goes. She stayed 3 months, 4 months. It was just great. And
That's great.
so that time afforded us the opportunity to really, you know, get to know each other.
That's just great.
Oh, it's awesome.
Okay, a couple more quick questions. Because it's Christmas week, I don't want to. We could go for 12 hours, literally. It's like endless. You have a dream to take this to lots of college campuses, and how appropriate is that dream today without getting political?
I think it's necessary, I think there's a lot of conversation starters in the play. And I think, yeah, I do want to tour. It's been really wonderful because what I thought we would be playing is like, I never saw past my 99 seat theater in LA. And then suddenly we're playing, I played 1,600 seats in Pittsburgh, 3 decks, 1,600 people. We're playing a lot of 1,000-seat houses. New Brunswick's 500 seats. It's gorgeous, which I feel is a real sweet spot for the show. 500 is beautiful. But so we're getting these great commercial opportunities. But I have my heart is set on at some point, whether it's when this runs its course or while it's running its course. NB PAC feels like in some ways we're almost on campus. It's right there to Rutgers. And I want to tour these colleges. I want to talk about Lenny to the kids who I feel like need to know about him moving forward. Agree or disagree with him. I think it's important to know him and what he stood for. And so I would love it. And, I know people are afraid they're going to get canceled. But, if they do something that people don't like, Lenny used to have this thing. He'd say, if you don't have my taste, then you have bad taste. Because that's the way it works, right? If you don't have my taste, then your taste is bad taste. It's kind of silly. And it was ironic. He would make fun of it. Like, basically, like, it's okay not to have my taste. That doesn't mean I'm wrong. This is not my taste. Like, he would say, I could say whatever I want, but then my boss also has a right to fire me. So I could say what I want, but then he can fire me if he wants.
Right.
Everybody's got a right to do what they want to do. So I'm not afraid to be canceled in colleges for like bringing up a piece of history that I think we need to examine. It's like, what are we doing then? That's what the theater's about. It's about education and teaching people and having an experience and a moment in time together. you know, I just don't feel that way. I feel like, I think if we don't do this for the kids, we're missing an opportunity. And so I'm gonna pursue the colleges with everything I have. And the word is getting out about the play, and the country knows about it now. And so I'm getting lots of interesting calls, and
Great,
let's see what happens.
great. Um, there's so many people who don't process and realize that Lenny is like the godfather of comedy. And he opened up the doors to George Carlin and to Richard Pryor. And somewhere in my memory banks is a quote, because you're friendly with Rain Pryor, Richard's daughter.
Yes.
She said something about what Richard said about Lenny. Um, how important
Oh
Lenny
yeah.
was.
Yeah, Richard and George, they both knew exactly. I mean, it was almost like Lenny, instead of pass the baton, he passed the microphone to these guys. It was like, and Carlin went on to be our modern day Lenny Bruce in a lot of ways. And I often wonder what George's career would have looked like had Lenny lived. I mean, would he have fought the good fight the same way? Probably, but I love Carlin. I mean, that's who I grew up on. I mean, Carlin is like, I saw him in, remember that place in Route 35, Club Benet?
Oh, sure.
I
Regis Philbin used to talk about that all the time.
saw him there. I'll never forget, like 50 people there. I'm like, it's George Carlin. It was amazing. I love him. And Pryor, obviously. And I think of all three of them, I actually think Pryor maybe was the funniest.
I agree.
He was the funniest
I
between him.
agree.
Like Lenny and George were incredible. And the thing I love about Lenny, and sometimes people don't get it, you'll even hear people go, he's not funny. That's because they're not opening their mind. He didn't try to be funny. He wasn't a joke comic. He always got to a point. His comedy was smart. He got to a point. He would literally, if he felt like you were not vibing with what he was trying to talk about, he would rather you not laugh just to get you to understand what he was trying to say, which is wild for a comic to do that. But he was up there. He was almost like, that's why I say he's not a comedian. He was almost like, spoken word, like, I'll tell you something, Calvin. I went to this record shop in Seattle a couple of months ago. I was up there doing something. So I go in this record shop and I go, you got any Lenny Bruce records? I always ask. The guy goes, yeah. So I went through the comedians. I didn't find it. You got any Lenny? He goes, yeah. He's over here. And he had him in the spoken word section.
Well,
I said, you don't have him in a comedy? He's like, no, he's in the spoken word section. Isn't that? He was a kid, 22 years old. He goes, is that right? And I go, well, it's interesting that I go, who made that decision? He goes, my boss. My boss decided he should be in the spoken word section. And I go, that's pretty cool in a way. And so that's what's so special about this guy. He wasn't just a cookie cutter comic. You almost don't know where to put him.
you're right. You're right. He's
Oh,
almost
he affected everything, not just
yeah,
comedy.
really you don't know where to put him and to categorize him with
Yeah,
this.
yeah. To categorize him doesn't work because it's like on the surface he was a comic, but there was so
Yeah.
much. He affected so many different. So it's wild, wild, wild.
Um, little plug for the work that Kitty Bruce is doing.
Yeah, I mean, Kitty Bruce started the Lenny Bruce Memorial Foundation, and I'm happy to be a big part of that. And what we do is we help put people through rehab who don't have money. I talk about it publicly. I'm sober a very long time. I never even had a legal drink. I was lucky. I got this at 20 years old. I got found sobriety, so I'm very blessed. Kitty's also publicly sober, so everyone knows that. So she and I, in Lenny's name, and there are other people who really help on the foundation as well. But what we do, the collective, what we all do is we put people through rehab in Lenny's name. Lenny never found recovery, so we try to help people. So if you buy a ticket to the show, a portion of that ticket goes to the foundation. So indirectly, you are supporting helping people find recovery. So if you weren't motivated before, maybe that'll knock it over the edge. But yeah, Kitty's a wonderful woman and she's doing incredible work in her dad's name. And I just love her. We're very, very close.
Yeah. Like I said before, one of the transformative parts of my life was meeting Kitty backstage. With my affectation.
At my show, you mean the cutting room?
No, actually, no. It was the Asbury Park Comedy Festival, the first one that was put on by Nick Clemens. And I was doing my journalism back in those days, my music stuff, and that was all part of my gig. And I had gone to that, and in preparation for that, I took all my Lenny Bruce albums and I put them on the sofa, and I put my bare foot up. I thought it was a great picture, and the caption was a leg up on Lenny Bruce. And Kitty somehow must have seen that on social media.
Oh, that's cool.
And when I went backstage as a journalist, there she was, and she recognized me. And I have a real photographer took a picture of that hug, which was, and it made it into my book because that's how important that was in my life to have connected. And that's my channeling and connection with Lenny Bruce, and I do what I can, and to have met his daughter, it's like, wow.
Well, that's how I feel too. I mean, again, not to get too over the top, I feel like in some ways, I feel like I'm here to like help make sure she's okay on Lenny's behalf. I'm a dad. I have two daughters. And so I often think of Lenny and go, how we doing? Are we doing okay? Like, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. And you know what? He knows and he sees and he's aware, and that stuff. That's why I wrote my novel, to talk about that spiritual element of life that I've been gifted with, enormous spirituality, and people coming out of pictures and typing stuff on my cell phone. I mean, so be it. And that's why I consumed 5 years of my life. Finally, how about to close this wonderful session? We can go for hours. How about a quick bit from the play?
We'll talk again. Don't you worry about that. We'll
yes.
You want me to do it? You asked me to do a Lenny routine?
Yeah, sure.
I never do this because it drives me
No.
nuts. I'm gonna do it for you, but I never do it because I'm always like, what am I? It's kind of like when you meet a comedian, you go, say something funny, say something funny.
Yeah.
That's what it does. But I'll do one. Let me see if I can remember. Let me see if I could give you one, a short one.
Well, there's one that comes to mind because I've seen the play a few times. The manufacturer thing.
Okay, I'll give you that one.
You like that? I love that.
Dig this, man. If the bedroom is dirty to you, then you're a true atheist. If anyone in this audience, Calvin, believes that God made his body and your body's dirty, well, then the fault lies with the manufacturer. You have a body that God made in his image, and now you want to judge some parts as good and some as bad. No, man, I don't see any reference to that in the Bible, man. Yeah. Yeah, if God made it all, it's either all clean or it's all dirty.
Yep.
It's a lot funnier in person, but I'm just doing it to Calvin.
Yeah,
so
yeah. Thank you. Thank you. You made my day. Thank you so much.
Calvin, I can't wait to see you there. Thank you. Listen,
Yeah.
anybody watching this in New Jersey, you have no idea how excited I am.
Yeah. Can't
Like,
wait
it's
to see you.
You get a gig, it's great, it's amazing. But I'm coming home, so it's gonna be
Home.
it's gonna be special.
You're coming home. Thank you. Merry Christmas, Ronnie, to you and Janelle and the family. All good things. I'm stop recording. Don't leave. We'll do a 30-second wrap.
Okay.
Little theatrical term I learned.
I like it.
Thank you, Ronnie.